Hi friends, welcome. Today I want to share with you some excellent photos that were taken in the New York City subway system and see what we can learn from them. We will first go over photos by other photographers, and then we will go over some photos by me, and you can determine if you think my photos are excellent or not. But the unique thing about talking about my photos is that I was in fact there when the photos were taken. So links below to all these photographers. Let's begin. So first we have this photo, which I quite enjoy. And I would say that this photo was, the moment that was behind this photo was probably something that came and went very quickly, if I had to guess. And it highlights the importance of keeping your head on a swivel, because maybe the photographer was walking past this situation and the person with the guitar all the way on the right, the person I would consider to be the main subject, even though there's a bit of a secondary subject over here on the left, the other guy who's looking at us. A stare, I would say, is a great way to establish the subject. But in this case, I would say the primary subject is the guy on the right. He may have looked up for a split second, and if the photographer was not ready for that, he could have easily missed that and thus missed this photo. There's a beauty in bizarreness that we have here. And I would say the bizarreness actually comes from the leg flying over the chair. It's a very interesting way to sit. And this is an aesthetic charm that you can give to a street photo. And it's something that I think is rather unique to street photography, focusing on things that are bizarre, as opposed to just, a beautiful set of trees in the distance. I think a burst could have been useful in this situation. And I mean, this is good because most cameras can burst, but if you're shooting with, there are plenty of cameras that you can shoot with that won't necessarily burst, but the ability to burst and then the preparedness to burst is a great way to make sure that you get a lot of options to work with here. However, if this was captured without a burst, I'm even more impressed. But one thing that is fantastic about this photo is the use of motion blur. The use of dragging the shutter. And I would say that in this case, it takes this photo to another level. It's good to imagine this photo with and without that motion blur present. And in this case, you can see that motion blur has given this photo a sense of drama and hustle and bustle. And I would say that this was a very slow shutter, because if you look at the guy second to the right, his guitar and his face is a bit blurry, and I would say that the shutter probably has to be pretty slow for that to happen, unless he was making some rather quick movements. So that's something interesting to take note of. And we have a well-established subject here, and one thing that allows the subject to be so well-established is, once again, that very stark stare, connecting with us and us connecting with him as a consequence. Another thing that helps establish the subject is the fact that the woman directly behind the subject, which could be something that would distract, does not distract so much because she is blurred a little bit. She's part of that dragging shutter situation. Thus, hopefully that wasn't loud for you guys. Thus, she is on the background plane and not on the foreground plane to our senses. Okay, on to the next one. Now, this is another moment that could have been very quick, and I was looking at this photo, and it took me a long time. I've looked at this photo over and over because I really enjoy it. It took me a long time to realize that what's probably happening is that the photographer is standing, I know she's a she, is standing on the platform while the person is inside the train. I was thinking that we were both inside the train and that maybe the person was on some sort of door, like between two train cars. I couldn't quite make sense of it, but then I saw this blue beam on the left-hand side here, and I realized, okay, that person has just gotten on the train, or he's about to get off. The door hasn't opened or just closed, and the train's about to go. So anyway, this is a bit of a harrowing picture for me as a street photographer. And one thing that to take note of is, like I think I mentioned already for this photo, this could have been a very quick moment, and he could have easily been out of position and never come into this position. Or he could have been looking down at his phone. He could have kind of been moved over a little bit to that direction. What would that be? His right, and then moves into that position for just a second. Capturing photos like this oftentimes takes a very quick wit. You can get them luckily sometimes, but once again, just being prepared, having your settings in place. These moments can happen when you don't expect them. The eye contact here is a powerful tool in street photography, and it's one of the best ways to help us establish a really intense connection with the subject. But you'll see in later photos, or perhaps a later photo that I have in mind, that sometimes eye contact is not the only, all times eye contact is not the only way to go. You can create different kind of connections depending on if the subject is making eye contact or not. But in this case, the eye contact, eye contact can also have different effects in itself. And in this case, I would say the eye contact is startling and unsettling, right? Whereas a lot of times it could be, warming, slightly unsettling. This is very unsettling, very startling, very intense. And I would say one thing that makes this particularly intense is the sense that you kind of got caught, but also the fact that he's making this really intense, almost predatory kind of face. And obviously he was just caught in a position where he wasn't ready. So I'm not saying he is in fact a predator, but that's the expression he's giving us, right? If someone just stared at you like this for an extended period of time, that would be quite harrowing. But another thing that creates this effect, I think, is the fact that the subframing of the window obscures half of his face. And we want to see what's happening with the whole face, right? So when it comes to taking a photo like this in this type of situation, it's good to use an aim and wait approach, right? Because like I said, that he might have caught the interest of the photographer, but he might not have been in quite the right position to make this occur. Okay, on to the next one. So this one, I'm guessing that this one probably took some degree of bravery. And what I mean by that is that the photographer is standing right in the middle of the walkway here, in the path of the person. It's entirely possible that the person, they spoke with each other and the person said, hey, come back through, or maybe they're friends, I don't know. But if this was a true candid shot, it probably took a degree of bravery, because it's hard to stand right in the middle of a walkway where somebody's coming at you and pull up a camera and take a photo of them. A lot of times we find other ways to do things, right? It's like, okay, I'll take a photo from the side, or I'll take a photo when the person's on the other side of a window, things like that. But in this case, the photographer seemed to has gone for it, and it turned out quite well. But I just wanted to pay attention to that. If you want to get photos like this, sometimes you have to be brave. So one thing that I find very interesting about this photo is that we have a lot of common elements here, or common to a subway system and common to a city, where we just have we have a person on a skateboard. You see those all the time. We have this wet floor cone hanging out, and then we have different flooring elements, wall elements, which are wall elements are actually pretty extraordinary. They're quite nice and unique to a subway system. And then you have some pipes. But the thing that makes this so compelling is, for one, you have all of these things coming together, and two is you have a lot of repetition. So it wouldn't be that interesting if we had one pipe going across the ceiling. But the fact that we have 20 pipes all going the same direction, and they're repeating each other, they're following each other. It's a very mesmerizing thing to us. And we sit and also on the walls, they're doing the same thing all the way down. And there's this waviness, a wavy quality to what's going on here. And that is, that's something that creates a sense of flow and motion. And another thing that creates a sense of, a sense of visual flow in the image. And then, now I'm going to get into the motion part. The motion here and the flow that is created along with the motion is, I mean that in a different way now, a different context. What I mean is that there's a sense of flow and motion that is created by the fact that the person is coming towards us on the skateboard, according to the fact that there are a couple different things. One thing is the fact that they're looking straight at us, right? We assume that that person is most likely coming this direction. Another thing is the arrow on the floor. So we have a reinforcement of the fact that the person is coming this direction, and then we have the person leaning into a turn. So all of these little things, or all of these little subtle things put together, reinforces over and over again the feeling of a sense of flow and motion. So hopefully I pulled that together nicely. Apologize for any confusion there, but and another thing is that the cone is actually a welcome addition in this case, where normally you try to get it out of the shot. It actually gives a really interesting anchoring to the left side of the frame. Feels welcomed. So I thought that was interesting. Okay, in this one, we have a moment that may have provided a bit more time than these shots that we've been looking at. Something where the photographer may have been able to sit for a few more moments and plan out the shot. Not a dramatically extended period of time, but I mean, it could have been a moment. She could have just walked over to the pole, stood there for a second, and then moved, right? But I would imagine that this person was just sitting there. She was just sitting there looking around, and then the photographer could have waited for her to make that motion. So if you're trying to avoid eye contact and avoid bothering somebody, a lot of times it's a good idea to wait in these situations for things to align. And what I mean by things aligning is we have the look on her face, which is something that had to align. It's something where she could have been looking a different direction. She could have been looking up, and both of her eyes were obscured. Any number of things. She could have been playing with her hands or something like that. And in this case, we have her looking over her shoulder in this really interesting, engaging kind of way, very thoughtful kind of way. And you have her hands together as well. And so you can sit there in these situations, don't pull the camera up to your eye yet, and just wait. When that moment comes in, be ready to snap. Maybe even have your focus set. A lot of times I'll focus at somebody's feet or something like that, and then boom, pull it up, go, and then you got it. And I have another photo that's going to be coming up that's actually very similar to this one, and probably employed a similar type of process to get the photo that was achieved. So there are many photos that involve a person hanging onto a pole in a subway. But there are reasons that this photo is set apart. For one, I would say we have a thoughtful expression, both on her face and her body. When I say expression, I mean everything that the human is doing. And another thing is the center weightedness of this, with her kind of being placed down at the bottom directly in the center. It looks like we had a sort of a middle ground to long focal length here, and that contributed to a sense of polish, a sense of separation from the background, with the f-stop being low enough to achieve that. And then we have a sort of decluttering effect happening because of that as well. We're cutting off things left and right, and like I said, we're making the background go a little bit out of focus as to separate, which is very important on subway trains. And once again, we'll get to a photo in a minute that I took where it was much more hectic than this, and you can see what can occur. Luckily, I was able to create some separation. So the end effect of this is that we're actually able to connect with this girl and in this moment. And I think obviously that is one of the huge superpowers of photography. Okay, on to this next photo that seems to involve Elmo. He must be going to some sort of brunch with his other Muppet friends. But the only thing I want to say about this photo is that an extraordinary subject can elevate an ordinary photo. This is a photo that is not particularly exciting, other than the fact, I mean, it's well composed, but if it was just a person standing there with like a handbag or something, it would not be that intriguing necessarily. But in this case, the composition didn't have to do a whole lot of heavy lifting, because we have a giant Elmo hanging out. So if you find a giant Elmo, don't worry about framing up the photo. Just do it. Okay, on to the next one. This is by my friend Michael. Had him on here quite a few times. And this is a fantastic photo. Very well done, very technically well executed. And this is a shot that you can really wait around for a long time to achieve. Trains don't tend to leave the tracks. Generally, they're going to go along the path set for them. If they're not, I would just look around and make sure that you're not in a dangerous situation. But in this case, I assume the train is on the track. It is following its set path, and you don't. So the patience method, which is what I like to call it, is a powerful method here. It's a powerful method for achieving photos on the street in general, but it has limitations. Because, for example, sometimes your correct subject may not come by for 5 hours, right? But in this case, you can trust that things will most likely align somewhat quickly. You have a train track. The trains are running all the time in New York City. You can probably, a train is probably going to come by every 3 minutes, right? On the high end. I mean, they're running very frequently, constantly. So in this case, we can see that he waited around for a second and framed it up, used that time to frame it up on the JetBlue sign, which I would say is the subject of the frame. But the interesting thing about this photo is that the subject's a bit obscure, because we have the train in the foreground as well. And so when you have a bit more of an obscure subject situation, a lot of times what you end up with, if it's done well, is what we have here, which is a bit more of an atmospheric mood photo. And so this atmospheric mood photo is well composed. Once again, it's very center weighted with this nice bright sign. And the sign, the fact that the sign is there versus not being there, steps this photo up to another place. And I think it's important when you're trying to frame up shots, and when you're using the patience method and waiting for something to come into your frame, use that time to figure out how you can step your photo up. Where are interesting things that can be placed into the background, context items, or interesting things that can be your subject or be something that will frame up your subject, right? So in this case, we have an excellent shutter drag. We have a sort of ambiance, cold winter ambiance. I love how the snow just kind of fills up the bottom foreground of the frame. And there's an excitement and thrill to this photo. And you have the snow falling down. It's fantastic. Well done, Michael. Good stuff, as always. Okay, so next we have some of my photos. And this is great because I'll be able to go into a bit more of the process for my photos behind how the photo was taken. I wish I could talk to each and every one of these photographers. I guess I could, but it would just take a lot of time to arrange all of that. But okay, so we have a photo that I took, it was last year or the year before? Yeah, I think it was last year. I really enjoyed this photo. It turned out quite well. I approached this man. This was on a photo walk video, by the way, too. And I'll link below to that. I'll link below to all the photo walks that this was, that my photos that are featured here were featured. You got it. So I approached this man and said, "Hey, can I take your photo?" And this gave me some time to thoughtfully compose while making sure he stayed in his position. And I mean, this is another method that will allow you to make your photos be a certain way, because if this was just a candid photo, if I just walked up, sure, I could absolutely capture this, but he might have been in the wrong place. I might have taken a bit more of a crooked photo. In this case, the lines are quite straight, and that time was really helpful. But as I was walking up to him and asking him, it was loud, so we were yelling at each other, and he initially says, "Oh, no, don't, I don't want you to take my photo." And then, but very quickly he was like, that's okay, that's fine, go for it. Which I'm glad he did, because this photo turned out fantastic. And I love his body positioning here, with the head turn, with the hands. You get this sense that he's just doing his job, and we're kind of peeking in, not making eye contact with us. And so because of that, it feels like we're just we're just checking in on what his daily life is like, and we're able to make a different kind of connection with him than if we're now having a one-on-one interaction with him that would come with a stare, right? So different methods for different outcomes. But yeah, it's like we get the sense that we connect with this normal fellow as he provides for his family. I love, from a compositional standpoint, the giant numbers, the play of shapes. We have straight lines, we have rounded corners, we have round things, circular items. We got the rivets, we got the camera. They're all playing together in a really pleasing way. And then we have, I even love this little warm point of light up on the right-hand side. So that's that one. Okay, here's another one I took, and we have a fellow making his way out of the subway, I would imagine. Maybe going to get some food with Elmo. Okay. Somebody commented on Instagram and said I breathe through my mouth, so I'm probably still doing that, and I apologize, but it's hard to think about breathing and talking at the same time. I think I'm supposed to breathe through my nose. But I whistle, which I think would actually be more distracting. So, okay. I had a bit of time to set up this shot. I was hanging around, and it was helpful, the amount of people that were passing through, because that allowed me to sit and pick my subject. Most people aren't this rich in their appearance. So, patience method. I used a longer focal length for this photo, and my settings were at ISO 800. I shot at a 50 millimeter focal length, f1.8 at 1/320th of a second. Now, what's interesting about this is that I could have dragged the shutter a bit more, introduced some of that drama that I was talking about. I've never been fantastic at dragging the shutter, and maybe that's part of why I admire when people do it so well. But I want to try it more. But I like that he's sharp, but I think that would have been another route, and that could have been an interesting route. Another thing that I would have loved to have happened in this photo this scene was if he had a spotlight on him, and then the rest was, the lighting was a bit more focused on him and away from everything else. That could have been kind of fun. So I should have brought my softbox, but I just I didn't have it in my bag that day. I should have gotten one of those giant domes that they use for car commercials. That would have been good. We would have had to cut out the roof, though. I mean, it is a good photo. It might have been worth it. So I want to talk about anchoring. I want to talk about how photos are anchored. And what I mean by that is there's a way that a photo is constructed that creates a sense of flow in that photo. And it can be anchored in the middle, left, right, up, down, wherever. Up would be an interesting way. But in this case, I would say this photo is anchored to the right. And what I mean by that is we have this corner where it kind of moves, the wall goes and then takes a turn around the corner on the right. We have this little stripe there. And to me, that sort of anchors the photo to the right. And then the man in the photo, the subject, he reinforces it. He's also on the right. So the photo feels like it starts on the right and then explodes out to the left. And so I guess a good way to think about this is, where does a photo start and end? This might be a unique way to conceptualize how a photo works, but where does a photo start and where does it end? something to think about. In this case, we have also some hints of directionality, meaning the direction that the person is moving in the photo. We have this aesthetically pleasing and characteristic of New York City subway tunnels rectangle moving down with, rectangles inside of it. And so we get the sense that he's moving down that rectangle, right? And then we have an arrow in the distance. And that also reinforces, just like in the previous photo, that the person is moving that direction. So you can use all these things, put it together. A good guideline is enforce and then reinforce. Next, we have this photo. I saw a photo that was similar to this on Instagram, and I think after that I really wanted to take a photo like this, and so luckily I ran into this situation. Now you guys may remember, if you watched this photo walk, that the man, it's 26 minutes. I was thinking this was going to be like 9 minutes long again. Where was I at? Oh yes. So if you guys watched the photo walk, this man actually, as I was taking the photo, as I was pulling the camera, well, I think I may have still had it up, he dropped his mask down, so I kind of got caught, and I played the Metal Gear Solid sound, like when the guard catches you. So that's fun. But to capture a photo like this, I walk up and down the platforms repeatedly, just waiting for a moment like this to occur. And I always wonder if people think I'm insane. But shots like these are the payoff for that kind of effort. So I think this is also a good example of allowing your settings to be a bit imperfect, if that is what happens. It's not the goal, right? You don't necessarily want that to occur. You want to try to be as close to a well-rounded set of settings as possible. But if it doesn't work that way, if the opportunity comes and you're not ready yet, then still take the photo. And shooting raw also helps with this. But a grainy photo, in this case, is like hyper grainy. And not like a good film grainy, but very soft. But a grainy photo can still be a strong photo if the strong photo is a strong photo in the first place, right? So, but in this case, I like photos that capture a moment in time. You see that here. It's very similar to the photo that I shared in a previous video about street photography that was taken during COVID, near the beginning of COVID. We had a guy with a gas mask on. And so, yeah, this photo kind of reminds me of that in an interesting way. I never got somebody with a gas mask, though. Okay, on to this photo. This will be the final photo. So this one was taken at ISO 3200 at 43 millimeters, which tells me I had a variable focal length lens on, and at f2.8 at 1/250th of a second. Now, once again, the f-stop is a very interesting point here, because you can see that f2.8 really helped me push the background out. And I probably had it that way also because of lighting, and I had really had to push. You can see I was at 3200. But the f2.8 f-stop allowed me to push the people out of focus, which was crucial for this photo because it was very cluttered. There's a lot going on. I'm pretty sure I darkened this photo quite a bit as well in Lightroom. And, the people in the shot, it's almost too much. It's almost, a 1.8 would have really helped me out even more here. But either way, I do think it worked. I think there is enough separation for the photo to be strong. And this is one of, if not my favorite subway photo I've taken. I absolutely love it. It's like we have her in her own world, exploring whatever world is in the book that she's holding. And this zeroes in on her as a person and highlights her, who is this stranger, as an individual. The photo asks you to connect with her and care about her. And once again, superpower of photography. And I love that I was there to be able to capture that. Okay, that's it for this one. I hope you enjoyed it, found it insightful. I just moved you guys, sorry. Would love to hear your thoughts. Please feel free to share them below. You can find me at James the Red. Please feel free to like and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. If you enjoy what I'm up to here, I would really appreciate that. I love you guys. Have a great day. Goodbye.